Antirez, the creator of Redis, shipped a new project 4 days ago. 7,100 GitHub stars already. It's called ds4, and it's a specialized local inference engine for DeepSeek V4 Flash. Here's what it is. This is Antirez/ds4, formerly DwarfStar 4, a small native inference engine for DeepSeek V4 Flash, written in C by Salvatore Sanfilippo, creator of Redis. The README's first line lays out the position. A small native inference engine for DeepSeek V4 Flash, intentionally narrow, not a generic GGUF runner, not a wrapper around another runtime, and not a framework. The optimized graph path targets Metal on macOS and CUDA on Linux. The point of the project is to make one specific model, DeepSeek V4 Flash, feel finished end-to-end on high-end personal machines or Mac Studios, starting at 128 GB of RAM. 7.1K GitHub stars accumulated in the 4 days since the repo went public. MIT licensed. Codebase is 51% C. Antirez openly credits llama.cpp and ggml throughout the README. The project doesn't link against ggml, but the kernels, quant formats, and engineering knowledge developed there made ds4 possible. Worth being precise about what ds4 is, because the README is explicit that it's not a few things. It is not a generic GGUF runner. It only loads the DeepSeek V4 Flash GGUF's Antirez specifically published for it. It is not a wrapper around llama.cpp or any other runtime. The inference path is original code, with Metal kernels and CUDA kernels written for this model's specific tensor layout. It is not a framework. There's no plugin system, no model registry, no provider abstraction. It is one binary that runs one model family, optimized end-to-end. That narrowness is a deliberate bet against the way local inference normally evolves, where every new generic runtime supports as many models as possible and the per-model tuning suffers. Antirez's framing in the README, one model at a time, official vector validation against logits from the official implementation, long context tests, and enough agent integration to know if it really works. The exact model may change as the landscape evolves. The constraint stays the same. Local inference credible on high-end personal machines. Why this specific model deserves a standalone engine. Antirez's reasoning in the README breaks down 7 points. 1. DeepSeek V4 Flash is faster than dense models of comparable quality because of fewer active parameters per token. 2. In thinking mode, the reasoning section is short and proportional to problem complexity, roughly 1 per 5 the length of other thinking models on the same prompts. 3. 1 million token context window. 4. At 284 billion total parameters, it knows more than 27 or 35 billion parameter dense models when you sample at the edge of knowledge. 5. It writes much better English and Italian than smaller models. 6. The KV cache is incredibly compressed, which makes long context inference feasible on local hardware and makes on-disk KV cache persistence practical. 7. It works well with 2-bit quantization when you quantize it in a specific asymmetric way. That's the 7-point case for why a standalone engine for one model is worth the effort. Install is a small dance. First, download the quant for your RAM. /download_model.shqdo for 128 GB machines. /download_model.shq4 for 256 GB or more. Pulls from Antirez/DeepSeek-V4-GGUF on Hugging Face. Resume as partial downloads. Updates the symlink. Then run make. It auto-selects Metal on macOS or CUDA on Linux. On Linux with no GPU, you can fall back to make CPU. Important warning straight from the README. Current macOS versions have a bug in the virtual memory implementation that will crash the kernel if you try to run the CPU path on Mac. Don't make CPU on macOS. Once built, /ds4 with -p and a prompt does a one-shot. Bear./ds4 drops you into the interactive REPL /think toggles thinking mode mid-conversation. And ./ds4-server with --ctx and --kv -disk-dir spins up the HTTP server with disk-backed KV cache for long context sessions. Here's the same flow in a single block. Pick a quant, build, run. The download script pulls from Antirez's Hugging Face repo. The model file gets symlinked to ds4flash.gguf. Make builds against Metal automatically on macOS, and you have a working ds4 binary plus a ds4-server binary. The --kv-disk-dir flag is the part to pay attention to. That's where the architectural bet shows up in the user-facing API. The architectural bet underneath ds4 is one sentence from the README. The KV cache is actually a first-class disk citizen. Every other local inference engine treats the KV cache as a RAM resident because RAM is fast and disk is slow. Antirez's argument is that DeepSeek V4 Flash compresses its KV cache aggressively enough, and modern MacBook SSDs are fast enough that the assumption no longer holds. Persists the KV to disk between turns, between sessions, even between reboots. The --kv-disk-dir flag on ds4-server is the user-facing piece of that bet. Beyond that, the engine ships tool and function calling compatible with both the OpenAI and Anthropic schemas, so coding agents that target either one will work. Thinking mode with configurable reasoning effort. Speculative decoding via experimental MTP. SSE streaming responses. Direction-based steering of model behavior. The 2-bit quantization is asymmetric. Only the routed MOE experts get quantized. Shared experts, projections, and routing stay full precision. That's why the 2-bit version still calls tools reliably under coding agents. By the numbers. 7,100 GitHub stars accumulated in 4 days. MIT license. Codebase 51%, C, written by Antirez with strong assistance from GPT 5.5. The README is explicit about that, more on it in a moment. Targets DeepSeek V4 Flash specifically. 284 billion total parameters, 1 million token context window, compressed KV cache, runs in 2-bit asymmetric quantization on 128GB MacBooks, or 4-bit on 256GB machines. Optimized inference path uses Metal on macOS and CUDA on Linux. CPU path exists only for correctness checks, and on macOS, running the CPU path will crash the kernel because of a virtual memory bug in current macOS. Antirez documents this in the README and is asking for help fixing it. Acknowledges Llama CPP and GGML. Copyright notice retained in license. Status: alpha. Antirez says it'll take months to stabilize. The line from the README that's worth pausing on is Antirez's transparency on how the project was built. Quote, "This software is developed with strong assistance from GPT 5.5, and with humans leading the ideas, testing, and debugging. We say this openly because it shaped how the project was built. If you are not happy with AI-developed code, this software is not for you." 2 things worth noting about that. 1. It's Antirez. The author of Redis writing C with AI assistance is a meaningful data point about where serious low-level systems work has moved. 2. The openness is the point. Most projects don't disclose how much AI was in the loop. Antirez puts it in the README's 3rd paragraph. The trade-off he names is real. If you don't trust AI-developed code, you shouldn't use this. And naming it up front is more useful than hiding it. The code itself is alpha, the GGUFs are alpha, the project only exists for a few days, worth watching, worth not depending on yet. ds4, Antirez, DeepSeek V4 Flash on Metal, 7,100 stars in 4 days. Star the repo, watch the development, don't trust it for production yet.